Bang. So, welcome back to the General Discussion Podcast. I'm George. That's Anthony. This is definitely not being uploaded at the same time as the first episode, despite being almost 2 weeks time separation.
Yeah, but, this one might be uploaded first, actually.
Classic, mate. Classic. Yep. Why not?
But so I'll tell you what. Like, obviously, everyone that's watching this is new to the podcast.
Yeah.
The fact that we can post it 2 weeks after, and it holds its same, relevance and emotional resonance, shows you how timeless this work is. It's really worth a listen.
Of course.
Obviously,
and it'll become even more timeless once I actually start using the Twitter account that we created.
I haven't heard about this Twitter account. So.
I remember when we first were discussing this, I created the Twitter account, and I sent you the password. And we got like a full email and everything. But like, I only remember. Funnily enough, I was doing my workout today. I was like, "Oh shit, we have a Twitter account, don't we?" But So
I mean, it's like we wouldn't be able to make it if we didn't have one already. But
bro, the Twitter. No, because we got to grab the handle. We have to grab the General Discussion Podcast handle early.
I'm surprised that was free, actually.
Yeah, so am I. It's Twitter. You never know. Obviously, if it's not the actual content of the podcast that gets us cancelled, it inevitably will be Twitter. Inevitably. What an absolute cesspool. It's a cesspool, man.
Yeah.
Sure, we'll devolve into a bit later, considering our topics. But first of all, Anthony,
yes,
hit on this. So, Anthony, you know what life insurance is, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
So,
mine's not worth insuring at the moment, though.
Yeah, I feel like ours might be worth insuring for the next 5 to 10 years, but depends how you are in life. But anyway, so you're a lawyer, yeah. Obviously, and a lawyer in America, you should, like, to be honest, your family should be having enough sort of income, I could say, to be able to sustain yourself. But so this South Carolina lawyer, whose name I'll just not say, right, wanted to get a claim for his son, $10 million of life insurance. Yeah.
Okay. I will say I haven't heard this story yet, so this is new to me. So he killed himself.
No, he hired a hitman to kill him, allegedly.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I think he survived.
So does that life insurance claim go through then? Like, what happens?
I don't know what would happen, but obviously he would get done for trying to commit insurance fraud.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't think he is alive, and that he apparently made a lot of decisions that he truly regrets. But I feel like he won't be getting that $10 million worth of life insurance.
Well, I guess he still has his life, so.
Yes, and he is a lawyer. He was a lawyer, sorry. Obviously, when a lawyer gets arrested, I don't think
he's got to be disbarred off for that one.
Yeah. Even though it is South Carolina, but
I know. I saw that. Is that a comment on South Carolina?
I don't know. I just feel like
South Carolina.
I have a feeling, man. I have a feeling that South Carolina is one of those states where the standards are a bit lower. Like North Dakota, Idaho, Iowa.
Yeah.
Iowa, South Dakota. These are the sorts of states I feel like where the standards are significantly lower. Yeah. California, the standards are lower if you actually progress in society, funnily enough.
I'm just going to say, I'm personally a fan of South Carolina. The great Senator Tim Scott presiding over the state. Can't get better than that. But
the only US senators I know is your mate Bernie Sanders, Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, and that's it. And then I know a couple of Congress people, i.e. AOC and her squad.
You know Chuck Schumer?
I've heard. Oh yes, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi. How could I forget?
Nancy Pelosi. All right, it's okay.
Yeah,
guys, honestly, it's probably better if you don't know about American politics. It's all bullshit, anyways.
Oh yeah.
All right, I reckon we start on the real news.
The real news.
What's really new?
Alrighty,
Well,
mate.
what?
So I reckon we start off a bit light, get them in. And then when we talk about sort of big headlines that have actually hit Australia, before I bore them with my international relations lecture, we get them in early. At least we can keep them in for the first half an hour or so. So I think we go with the Met Gala. Obviously, big event
For sure,
held in LA for all the celebrities to flex.
Wait, just a quick fact check there. The Met Gala is held in New York at the Met Museum.
What the fuck? This is how much I know about celebrity culture.
Yeah. Well, honestly, that's a point for you, not for me. So, in case you guys didn't know, the Met Gala is like a fundraising event each year for the Metropolitan Museum of Fashion or something rubbish like that.
Of course, because the Museum of Fashion, it's right up there with UNICEF trying to end world hunger.
Yes.
We're on equivalent levels here. We got starving kids in Africa. Then we have the Museum of Fashion. Then we have the people in Afghanistan. Just sort of goes down like that, I reckon. It's one of the most important things in the world, the Museum of Fashion.
Well, I tell you what, if you actually looked at what some of those people were wearing to it, you would not think that they were attending the Museum of Fashion. Very
I saw some of the stuff on the news at dinner. It's the only sort of exposure I get to non-politics related news is at dinner when my parents watch The Project, which I despise. The passion. Project. I hate The Project with a passion, and every normal Australian should.
Yeah.
For one reason or another. But, I saw Kim Kardashian in all black with some other guy in the all black.
That was probably one of the better ones, to be honest with you.
It was a great statement on society, I think.
I wasn't sure if it was like in solidarity with the women in Afghanistan or something.
But that requires intelligent thought, which I don't think Kim Kardashian is quite capable of. I think she's a person.
I wouldn't say that for the record. Kim Kardashian's a personal inspiration for myself.
I think she'd melt if the temperature hit above 50 degrees Celsius, personally.
No. The melting point for silicone is much higher than 50 degrees Celsius.
Okay.
Yeah. On that one.
She's one of those people where you look at her and you're like, how long till you melt? Surely. Who else? I remember watching some rubbish YouTube videos. I think it's called AFT or something. It's one of those celebrity tabloid. Like TMZ style.
And it's she was scanning her ass to prove that it wasn't a implant or something like that. But the surgery that you would do to get a larger ass it's called a Brazilian butt lift, and so it's sort of like a
Don't you get fat from the thighs?
It's a liposuction procedure. Yeah, so it wouldn't show up anyways. It's
I don't think it's that healthy to have that amount of fat in your glutes.
Yeah. No, there's definitely something wrong gone on there. But
I'm just saying, as a former really fat person, I don't think having that much fat on you is healthy. Especially when it's concentrated.
I actually don't understand I guess the physiology behind why having a lot of fat's bad. I understand having a fatty liver or higher fat is correlated with a high fat body composition is correlated with is it called vascular plaque or something like that?
There's cancer,
heart
COVID.
disease, fatty liver, which results in diabetes. It's just not good for you. It decreases pancreas function. Hormone problems. It's but I don't actually.
I found ever since I started taking my training seriously, the biggest thing was correcting hormones, because I had heaps of imbalances with the hormonal profile. Personally,
were you taking blood tests and stuff to measure that?
No, but if you you could measure the fat content or whatever, the thickness of the fat, and you're no. So I had insulin problems. My metabolism was fucked.
If you have more fat, you should produce more testosterone as well.
It actually is found to reduce testosterone.
Really?
Yeah.
Maybe it's eating more fat produces more testosterone. Helps to produce.
Probably eating it, not
Yeah, because it's one of the it's one of the reactants in that reaction pathway, harking back to high school chemistry. All right.
Nice.
I think we're a bit off
Back
topic
to
here.
yeah, but back to the Met Gala. Who else is there? Little Nas X had that cool suit of armor, and then he like stripped it off. And had, like, a skin tight suit. Bro, he should have stayed in the armor. I'm a big fan of like medieval weapons, and like that armor looked mad.
Yeah,
that armor was sick. Who else? We had we'll get the elephant. Address the elephant in the room. The one was sort of beating around the bush. AOC. So obviously famed American socialist. Alessio Ocasio-Cortez or something. I don't remember.
I don't know. It's Alexandra.
Yeah.
Jesus fucking. I just
know her as AOC.
She calls herself AOC. So
to be fair, the first time I heard
she's gotten
AOC,
pissed off at people for calling her AOC in the past. So let's just get it right.
It's double standard. The first time I heard someone call her AOC, I thought they were talking about the PC.
Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez.
I thought they were talking about there's a brand for computing parts called AOC. So I thought they were talking about. I was like, what the fuck? But no, it turns out she's an actual person. She's part of the the wave of new socialism, the Democratic Party. Her and her mates, such as Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, Bernie Sanders, the OG, and then the other lady who I cannot remember her name.
I would not say Bernie Sanders is part of that group. You know, often referred to as the squad.
The squad,
like the grandfather
he's sort of
figure.
Yeah, he's the grandfather of the squad. And then you got like
he's nowhere near as radical as they are, though.
And you got the weird stepmom like Elizabeth Warren just sort of chiming in.
Yeah. What's that? Anyways, well, like the big thing about AOC was she wore a tax the rich dress.
Yes, at an event filled with rich millionaires.
To the Met Gala, which is, you know, in my estimation, pretty much a celebration of richness and, you know, wealth and sophistication.
Those people are what like young kids look to as well. Young people don't look to Bill Gates as a symbol of wealth. They look to fucking like Kim Kardashian and like these people are what, because like there's the Bill Gates wealth, right, where it's all held in assets, and then you got like tangible wealth. Like celebrities have like I'd say more tangible wealth. Let's say like a Bill Gates.
I mean, no offense, but probably not as much as Bill Gates.
Yeah, not as much as Bill Gates, but in terms of like,
even if he had 1% liquidity, that's still $2 billion in the bank.
Yeah, still quite a lot of money.
Yeah,
he's still one of the richest men in the world. But yeah, so she attended this event. Don't the tickets cost like tens of thousands US, something like that?
Yeah, it's like 35,000.
Yeah, so
but
obviously
like
socialism at its finest.
Well, the ticket is a donation to the museum, so I'm not against the Met Gala at all. Like personally,
the Museum of Fashion is like one of those key social justice issues that we touched on at school.
You guys can't see me. You guys can't see me, but I'm literally wearing a top in this like fucking hideous pattern.
Bro,
I think it's called like
an
or something. Yeah, I am in my PJs.
I didn't go for a run. I would be in my PJs if I didn't go for a run.
I go for runs in my PJs. That's besides the point. I think the more atrocious thing about this is that she attended the gala with the dress made by, and I'm not shitting you, this is 100% certified, a tax avoider.
What the fuck?
The lady who made her dress has currently over $40,000 in overdue taxes, which is dodged by moving state to state in the US.
You love that, don't you?
You know, you gotta love a hypocrite. You gotta love a hypocrite.
You gotta love it.
I'll obviously link that article below.
We'll fix it in post.
Yeah.
Fix it in post.
But I'll probably put a screenshot up or something.
We should probably put links to our articles in the description. That's all.
Yeah, for sure.
Idea. Yeah.
I mean, you know,
tax the rich.
I don't know what to say. Tax the rich. Just richer than me. Everyone, you know, I'm the baseline. I'm poor. Sen above is rich. That's what it feels like.
Yeah, I don't like if she really wanted to make like a stand against like rich people, why would you go to an event that's like explicitly about flaunting excessive wealth? well, like the sort of money that you.
I mean, well, she's
those
partnered
practices.
with a person, right? She's partnered with a person that clearly has like no regard for sort of a
Society.
social responsibility. She doesn't
For
have
a
a CSR,
society.
CSR outlook on life. She's all about herself. That's why she's dodged these taxes using a shelf corporation,
Nice.
which you can read about in the article below.
Nice. Shell corporation, Wolf of Wall Street style.
Yeah, like she has no regard for social responsibility. She has no regard for the tax system. She does not give a shit. I guarantee you, she does not give a shit that she's putting a greater allegedly. Although I did say guarantee, so I'm gonna take this one. I bet you, she does not care, not one bit, that she's burdened her fellow taxpayer, and she's a net negative on the system. She doesn't care. But what she does care about, Patros.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna blank that one out. What she does care about is making sure you know that you're an awful, terrible person.
Of course. It's our fault that the system is fucked. It's our fault that we let the system be what it is. It's our fault.
Not the tax avoider's fault. Please remember, it's not the tax avoider's fault.
It's our fault, mate. It's society's problems rest on us. That's the moral of the story.
Yeah.
And taxing the rich, again, like I get the idea of taxing the rich and everything. One, you can't do it because the amount of like laws and stuff, like the legal loopholes you're able to pull through.
But I mean, like, I'm going to put aside Australia and the rest of the Western world for a second. Like in the US, like, what type of insane person could say that they're not already taxing the rich? Like what? Who? How? If you take into consideration, well, like just to start off with, the top 10% of all taxpayers pay 90% of the taxes. That's like point number one. Two, if you take into consideration the fact that you both give and take from the tax system in terms of benefits, children's education, stipends, pensions. If you take that into consideration, so just looking at what people put in as a net positive. So if I give 15,000 in taxes and take 20,000 in benefits, I'm not a net positive to the system. I'm simply like paying for myself. Like,
yeah,
we'll just like start with that idea. If you take that like sort of outlook towards it, the top 10% of taxpayers pay all the taxes, all of them.
Nice.
So
but the thing is, well, you got to look at tax the rich corporations. It's impossible to like fully tax them the way they're setting up shit in like Ireland, like Cayman Islands.
Yeah, there's always that. One. I mean, obviously you could assert tariffs and stuff to enforce that on their products. If you're not,
that would negatively affect the general population.
Yes, well,
you have to offset the tariffs.
Yeah,
don't you? That's a tax on the buyer, not the seller.
Yeah. Well, Sean Hannity, like anybody that studied economics, will tell you that corporations don't pay taxes; consumers do. Yes. That's not entirely true. Like
on face value,
I'm gonna put on a graphic here that's just like some simple microeconomics, 101.
Oh yes, I'm getting week 3 flashbacks to my microeconomics lecture.
Like
when we're going over cigarettes.
Yeah, if you apply a tax, you push it up, you can see the graph. Maybe it might even be a video, and then the consumer ends up paying for like 90% of it for like a 10% tax. The higher the tax goes, the more the business pays for it. However, so yeah, taxation should be avoided at all costs when it comes to goods.
We are not suggesting you commit tax fraud, however.
No, I'm saying that the policy should be avoided at all costs. Yeah.
Do not commit crimes.
At least don't tell them that we told you to.
Awesome. We are not legally liable for your decisions. We're not legally liable for your decisions.
Yeah, that's just
speaking of legal liability for other people's decisions in the Met Gala,
Right,
have you
before we
seen?
move on to the Met, before we move away from the Met Gala, like,
I was about to side
like,
tangent. Met Gala.
do you feel like there's any value in it?
No,
Why not?
I don't like personally. I'm not a big fan of celebrity culture. I think it's just a waste. Like,
But it's not celebrity culture though.
Mindless entertainment. Like
It's
what the whole
celebrating art.
world now. I guess so, but I just don't. I just don't see a point personally. Like, they're going into the fucking New York, right? And they're flaunting, you see, like all these dresses and gold brass. It's not probably gold. It's probably brass plated armor. All black. Tax the rich. You're flaunting all this wealth. You could say you're flaunting how rich you are. Yeah. It's like, what's the point? Like, isn't there like other things to do than watch these people and get invested in their lives?
Oh no, I'm not saying for us to watch it. I'm just saying for it to exist.
I understand why it exists. I just don't see a point in like at all.
Okay, fair enough.
I'm not a big fan of celebrity culture. I think it's a bit cringe. Personally.
What about the Nicki Minaj stuff that's breaking now? The red pill journey.
Again, no. Like the only values, like in terms of like the arts, not like the art, like humanities arts, like the actual like arts. Like the sort of things I see value in the arts, I guess, is like, modern art. I think is half a joke. To be honest with you, I'm a bit like that. That's my opinion. When you go to an art museum and you're seeing a fucking urinal in an art museum, I think that's a joke. Like, it can't be anything more than that. But like, I see value in things like tangible things that reflect society. Like, architecture is a big one. Look, like architecture tells you a lot.
What about clothes? Society. What about clothes?
Well, I don't care about clothes personally.
Are you serious?
I'm not a big like.
How can you be a fan of architecture and not clothes?
Architecture, I think, reflects broader society and its values. You look at like Soviet architecture. It's bland. It's boring. It's the same. It's a homogenous collective.
Are you really going for bland and boring? Well, Soviet architecture was also grand.
Yeah.
Even if it was plain.
Then you have obviously, Renaissance architecture and art. Ancient Greek architecture.
We're talking out of our ass now.
Yes, we are. That's like got half this, but no, I'm not a big fan of like most of that sort of stuff, to be honest. Like clothing and fashion, I don't really care. I'm not a big clothes fan. I buy clothes when I need to, out of pure necessity, when they're too big or too small.
But like, how can you say you'd wear clothes out of like just for purely in a utilitarian way? Like, yeah, this cloth keeps me warm and it presents me neatly for the public to see me, so I can go to work and go to university and come back home and take them off. Like, is that how you feel about clothes? But how can you feel that way about clothes? The way you present yourself to the world, and not feel that way about your home? Like, could you live in a bland home?
No.
Like, imagine if it was just a concrete box.
No, but again, I'm not talking about a home, am I? I'm talking about my clothes. I understand you're trying to extrapolate.
What's the difference? Because the home is sort of.
A home is obviously a pure utility. Yeah, it's out of functionality, sure, but like when I'm at home, I want to be entertained on some level. I want to be like be able to do things when I'm at home. I'm not going to do things with like the clothes serve a functional purpose. Like I've got this thermal here. As like a purely functional thing. I bought it out of necessity, not because I really wanted a camo thermal. I got it out of necessity for a trip to the farm in Orange when it was going to hit like a -2 degrees one night. It needed to be warm.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I love clothes. I love fashion. So
yeah, we will. But like when it comes to spending my money on like things are pretty much objectively a waste. It's got to be like my hobbies are always expensive. Obviously, I do have firearms, which are quite expensive in Australia, and I do have a saltwater fish tank. And like today, I spent $150. I had to buy salt and a chemical. So $45 for the bottle, 1 liter bottle of chemical, and then it was like 105 for a 22-kilo bucket of salt. You know, it's like a complete like way. And like the week before, I bought like a chemical again, and a coral. Like the coral was no bigger than that. Say that circle for $35. I
50-cent coin.
Yeah. I've seen corals like 5-cent piece for $1,000. I talk about a waste of money. As someone who keeps saltwater fishing coral, I know it's a waste of money, but I like it nonetheless.
All right. I guess we'll move on to some real news now.
I was sort of going to go on a tangent from the Met Gala. Big news. Nicki Minaj didn't attend.
Oh, that's some big news. I thought we were going to go on to AUKUS, but yeah, let's do that first.
No.
Yeah, I guess that is bigger.
She didn't attend.
Cultural awakening, guys.
Due to her opinions on the vaccine. Now, I'm of the view, like, it's similar to when Joe Rogan said that he was taking ivermectin for COVID. I'm of the view. And when someone says something like that, it's not their responsibility, right, to dictate what the objective idiots do. You know, like, why is Nicki Minaj responsible for people she has never met and never will meet in her life? I don't understand that personally. At some point, you got to understand, like, if these people are just blindly following what others are saying, they are sheeple and they are doing it to themselves in some sense. It's kind of like the Tide Pod challenge, you know. It's irresponsible and really dumb, and I don't understand what goes through your head to do such things. But, you know, it is what it is, I guess. This is a society, as we call it. So Nicki Minaj went based and retweeted Tucker Carlson. Hassan Arbi of Twitch fame, you know, famously said America deserved 9/11. Famously, the nephew of Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks, a left-wing organization who, Turkish in nature, named themselves after the Young Turks, who originally committed genocide against the Greeks, Armenians, and Assyrians within Turkey during the First World War. So it's a great name.
Disclaimer: my co-host is Greek.
Yes, disclaimer: I am Greek, but it is true that the Young Turks did commit genocide. This is
he has no animus towards the Turkish people, just the Turkish nation and history.
Yes,
and existence.
As most Greeks, as most Greeks do. Yeah, so he came out and said that you know, she's retweeting a white supremacist. I don't know how Tucker Carlson is a white supremacist. I haven't seen any evidence.
No, so I'm a bit lost here. Who said that Tucker Carlson was
that Hassan Arbi guy? You know that? Oh, you wouldn't really know. You don't really keep up with YouTube and Twitch and whatever. But this big Twitch political left-wing Twitch streamer, big fan of AOC. You know, he said that you know, she was retweeting Tucker Carlson is, you know, she's retweeting and platforming a white supremacist. Big claim.
Is Tucker Carlson a white supremacist just because he's white? Is that like the argument for it?
I think the argument is that since he's a conservative and he's white and he's male, he's a white supremacist.
But he's not really a conservative either, is he?
He's more of a populist.
He's a populist, yeah.
You know, he was.
But like,
he originated in written news.
It's such a disgusting label. It's such a disgusting label, and it's thrown so easily and so cynically.
It's like almost
Tucker
lost
Carlson
its
does
meaning.
not deserve that.
It's almost lost its meaning. Like, it's almost like, you know, the term alt-right. You know, legally that's like lost all meaning.
Legally,
yeah,
I don't know how to legal meaning.
Like, I mean, like, because alt-right was originally like this right-wing movement, whatever. But so many people have been called alt-right who aren't alt-right. You know, it's hard to define in a legal sense. So you can't really get sued for defamation. That's sort of a side point. But again, like, you're just throwing a word like white supremacist. Doesn't it like devalue the meaning of the word? Like the term, sorry.
That's a good question.
I feel like
I'm gonna say that it doesn't. And I'm saying that because it means what it means. It
does.
It means that you hate other people. It means that you're like a eugenist. Like, it means that. Like, it's still like when you say that, I think immediately horrible person, someone I wouldn't want to be around.
Think of it like Adolf Hitler, obviously one of the most.
It's just, but in almost everyone's case, like every time it's used now, it it's not true. It's just a lie.
It sort of waters down the meaning, in my opinion, when you like overuse a word, like a term. Sorry, it's not a word; it's two words. But the term, like that, I feel like it loses some sort of significance and meaning, almost like you're becoming desensitized to it in a sense. You're just like half-assed
when you say it waters down the meaning, does that mean like to say someone's a white supremacist is no longer as bad? Like it's
no, I think it's still no. It obviously will still always have that connotation, but like it's sort of, I guess, if everyone's a white supremacist, you know, doesn't that
makes
mean
it worse? I don't know.
I feel like you can't call like everyone a white supremacist. Like you can't just call people you don't like.
I mean, they called Larry Elder a white supremacist.
The guy's black. Come on, tell me that doesn't mean the word loses some sort of meaning.
Can I just say my heart's actually broken that Larry Elder didn't win the California. Jesus.
Mate, when Biden is focusing more time on California than he is on Afghanistan, there was no way Gavin Newsom was going to lose the recall.
Well, Biden actually spent more time making sure that the heartbeat bill in Texas didn't go through, or tried to make it not go through, that he did in Afghanistan, that he has on the border crisis, that he does on inflation, geez.
The priorities. Again, it's like with the Met Gala fundraiser. It's just priorities, and it's clear that we are wrong for our priorities.
God forbid a couple of little kids make it out of the womb. God forbid. Seriously.
God forbid.
Honestly, like, there's actually, like, here's the thing, right? Life is great.
For many people.
No, life is always great. What would you say for many people? Isn't suffering great? Don't you feel alive? When you just feel like you're in such a shit place, you're feeling depressed. It feels like the world's caving in around you. And you move your way out of that place. You get better. Doesn't that feel great? Doesn't it make you feel alive?
Again, mate, I'm the type of person that's like, I am like generally like one of the most my life, whatever happens type of people. And again, like if I like have a real shit like depressive episode or whatever, I'll move on. I don't ever like tend to think or reflect on like, wow, isn't like, I've overcome this life. So I'm just like, okay, cool. We're gonna keep moving on. I'm not as spiritual or whatever as you, so it's kind of a bit hard to express such things today because I'm just sitting here like still just life at the end of the day, mate. There's nothing really special about my life compared to say yours, for example.
No, I think every life is infinitely valuable. Like if you just take a moment to think like how much of a miracle it is, like not like people say like, oh, it's like a 1 in a billion chance of you being born, and it's like a 1 in a trillion chance that the circumstances or climate circumstances on Earth would enable carbon-based life to exist or whatever. Like, no, I'm not even talking about that. I'm just talking about like the actual mechanism in which we live our daily life. Like, just I can't even put it into words. It just makes me feel so happy. Like,
yeah, I can tell you can't put it into words, mate. I can tell. We can all tell. I'm guessing
it's so rich. More nihilistic. Like the colors, like that's enough. Seriously,
I think I'm just a bit too nihilistic and cynical at this point in my life, to be honest.
Yeah,
I think I've been entrenched too much in the political system to actually like. That's what's because I think if I never got really into politics, whatever, I wouldn't be as nihilistic and cynical as I am. That's my firm belief. And my firm warning to everyone: do not get into politics on like a real in-depth level, because you will go in the rabbit hole, optimistic and hopeful, thinking that there will be change. But when you eventually enter deep enough, you go deep enough in the hole, you will truly see that the system is completely fucked. But enough about the degeneracy of the system.
No, I think we should linger there for a second.
I was going to quote my favorite press secretary, Jen Psaki, we're gonna circle back.
Except in this case, we're actually going to circle back.
We're actually going to circle back to Nicki Minaj. Obviously, speaking of Jen, she said that the White House offered to call Nicki Minaj with Dr. Fauci, obviously.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Look, I'm not finished with life. I'm not finished with life. I'm not finished with politics. The triumphs in the past 1,000 years that the sort of libertarian movements have in the political sphere, if that makes you nihilistic, there's something wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with politics. If you can't accept that there's the forces of good and evil, it's disagreements between people, you're not embracing the true richness of the human experience.
There's a reason why I didn't.
Mate, that's why you should be interested in politics, guys.
This isn't Year 12 English class. This isn't.
No, this is life passions. Oh, I'll take that out.
Anyway, we're gonna actually circle back to Jen.
I actually have something to say about Nicki Minaj first.
Oh yeah, I think she should say whatever the fuck she wants. Like
what Nicki Minaj said was stupid.
Oh yeah, 100%.
There's no evidence
to suggest
that any COVID vaccine, because she didn't specify which vaccine the guy had. And so the people say, oh, the COVID vaccine. It's like, what is it? Like 6 COVID vaccines now?
Yeah, isn't it like?
And America there's like 4 available.
Oh. Yeah, it's like what, Moderna, Pfizer.
So it's more than 6, but there's more than 6. There's like Novavax. 6 available in the US or something like that.
There's like Novavax,
Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson. I think AstraZeneca is available in the US. It's 4.
I think they have Novavax as well.
Yeah, Novavax.
In Russia you get Sputnik. In China you get whatever one the Chinese one is.
Yeah, I don't know what it's called.
I don't understand how.
I thought there was another one, but maybe I'm wrong.
How could China get the vaccine so quickly compared to the rest of the world? Considering
I'm pretty sure Russia was first. That's besides the point. What Nicki Minaj said was stupid. It really was.
Oh yeah.
It wasn't retarded.
There was no scientific basis for her claims.
No scientific. Like he could have done anything to his balls, and that could have happened.
Yeah.
He could have been developing prostate cancer for the last 5 years, and now it's showing signs. Something like that. I'm not a medical expert, so I'm not going to go too in depth. But I can tell you, there's no evidence that that's a side effect of any of the COVID vaccine.
Yeah, correlation doesn't equal causation in this case.
Well, it's not correlation. It's just an anecdote.
Yeah, it's
anecdotes isn't
scientific evidence.
Although, she's allowed to say it.
She has the right to say it. Yep.
Yeah, she's allowed to say it. And she didn't say, no, don't take the vaccine. It's a horrible thing. She said, exercise, your faculties of reason and your ability to make judgments as a human being, as a free person, and make a judgment. And don't be bullied. So, to oppose that statement, it's like, all right, what are we opposing? Don't think for yourself? Or we're bullies, so don't get in our way.
Again, I'm going to clarify quickly here, because vaccines, for some reason, on our political topic, never thought we'd see the day.
Why? Can I just say, like, people say it's like this shouldn't be political, this shouldn't be political, that shouldn't be political. Like vaccines, gun rights in the US or something like that. It's like, no, I think everything's political. The politic is how we treat each other, how we live together. Everything's political. Whether someone has a vaccine, not for COVID, like the COVID vaccines, actually, it turns out they work. They work. If you have the COVID vaccine, you're protected.
Oh yeah, I'm just going to clarify now and say that we support the idea of vaccines. I personally had my first dose, and I'm waiting to get my second. I think you're fully vaxxed, aren't you, Anthony?
Next week I'll get my second dose.
Next week? Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, however, I also believe, and I'm sure you do as well, that people have the right to choose whether they want to have a vaccine or not.
Yeah. I want to say that they do, but I think it depends. In this case, I think that they should, because the COVID vaccine does have minor risk, although it does have risk, and the COVID virus does have a minor risk. So, and the vaccine protects you. it's like I don't feel like someone else's decision impacts you to a great enough extent for you to like enforce yourself on another person. But like for something like polio, if there was like a case where there was like breakthrough infections through the even if you had the polio vaccine, I'd mandate that shit. I'm not gonna lie, but
understandable.
But maybe that's wrong. You know, I think it's a John Adams quote. It's like a person that values safety above liberty deserves neither, or will have neither, or something like that. You know, does that make sense?
Yeah, of course.
So I don't know. Like, in what scenario do you think it is okay to mandate something?
I think when like the cost to the greater good. Obviously, the greater good is an argument which has been which can and always will be used as a method of control from a government on society. I hate to break it to you at all, but you know, Adolf Hitler did use this argument to sort of justify genocide.
There's correlational studies between the outbreak of infectious disease and authoritarian government, and they're strongly correlated. There's like a 0.8 correlation.
I was reading a book.
It's like pretty much the exact same thing.
I was reading I've started reading it's a 3-part book series on the history of China from 1945 to 1967. So I finished the first part and was talking about how in the Korean War, America used bioweapons and whatever. And then Mao Zedong basically was like, yeah, we're going to kill all the pets, right? And we're going to get everyone in China has to get vaccinated for these scarlet fever, typhoid, tuberculosis, 6 different viruses. Everyone had to get fucking vaccinated. There was no choice in Mao Zedong's China. Nor is there choice now. As we've seen, history has repeated itself in China. But at some point, if the damage, like I say, of a disease truly is great and existential, I don't think COVID as a disease is that existential of a threat, personally. I'm sure it is. Some people.
The science is clear now. For children, at least in the UK, for boys in the UK, from the age of 12 to 15, they're 6.1 times more likely to be hospitalized from the vaccine. From the I think it's for all vaccines. Was it AstraZeneca?
No, I think
I'm not sure. Jeez, I should know this. I'm going to look at article below, and then we're going to have the stats on the screen.
Yeah, we'll retroactively fix our fuck up, like how America fixes their foreign policy. So
that one will be 5 minutes.
Okay,
6.1 times more likely to be hospitalized from the vaccine than they are from the virus. So, in that case, I think it's reprehensible to mandate the vaccine.
But obviously, you got the argument of grandparents and whatever. But at that point, I feel like if you mandated it for the older population or for people at risk of then society would be better off. I think that's the main thing. I feel like if we're going to mandate something like that, it should be for those who are at higher risk.
What about something that's undoubtedly in the greater good? In the greater good, and it can't hurt anybody. It just helps. For example, when Bloomberg was president, he banned the sale of a certain size of soft drink or something like that. How do you feel about that? Is that okay?
I feel like in rare one-off cases, yes, but it shouldn't be used as a precedent. It should be just a one-off case type thing. It shouldn't be a regular occurrence.
So do you think the soft drinks in New York was a one-off case?
I feel like it was a one-off case, yes.
But for example, if I was to say, we could even say porn's been studied and porn
addiction
consumption in children has been studied, and it's proven to be a bad thing.
Wait, what are you talking about, Anthony? Porn for people under the age of 18 is illegal. Therefore, no one under the age of 18 can access it. I don't know what you're talking about, mate. It's illegal. It means it can't happen.
The average age in which a male child is exposed to porn is 11 or something like that.
I'm not surprised by that.
It's an unfortunate reality. So, should we have stronger measures to stop them?
I feel like in that case, like porn addiction, like I've seen the studies myself. I've seen a lot. I've read a bit about it actually. I feel like the detrimental effects of like porn addiction on a young, it mainly affects males. It's not really something that affects females that much. I feel like at that point you can enforce greater restriction. Like in England, they didn't really ban pornography, but what they did is like the porn sites have to make you show photo ID, like a passport.
That's right.
I feel like something like that. You're not banning it, but it's just like something like that. It's still legal. It's just like you have to be of the age.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not banning it. It's just highly regulated.
So do you think that's fine? I think that's good.
I think that's fine.
If I had the power, I would do that.
I would too. I think it's great. I think that's a great policy idea.
What about for people older than 18?
For older 18, you're an adult at that point.
But it's still bad.
It is still bad, but again, at that point, you should know.
It's like it's not hurting anyone else, right?
Yeah.
But what if I told you, like the porn industry and your viewership helps?
Oh yeah, child trafficking. Yes, I've seen.
Even not child trafficking. Like under the assumption that you're not watching child pornography. That's disgusting. Yeah. Sorry.
Abuse of women, obviously.
Yeah, like abuse of women of any age. You could say.
I feel like at that point, what
your viewership was contributing to that.
I think you can have a two-tone
and monetizing
policy.
That. Sorry.
I think you have a two-tone policy, where like one, you do like that from 18, they have to show photo ID or whatever to get on. But two, you teach I'm saying like nowadays where you teach sex education when they're like 10. I'm saying like when kids hit like
I shit you not. Like in terms of sex education, my brother's school ran a sex education class for year 4. Wait, actually, that's not that bad. My brother's 9. It's not 10. But yeah.
I feel like I thought
in my mind, my brother's 2. So yeah.
When they hit like say the age of 16, 17, 18, I feel like you should just mandate, but like sort of heavily incentivize schools to sort of teach. So like maybe it's like a 1-off or 2-off class or whatever, just sort of about it. So that way at least they go into it knowing the damage they're doing to society.
And to themselves. But for example, a murderer knows that when he kills someone's mother or father, they're or both. Okay, let's say both. They're orphaning children.
But again, I've got to say this. Just because something is illegal doesn't mean it's going to stop. If you look at the drug war in the US,
For sure. But what does it say about society?
You could say it makes it worse. You could make a tangible argument that in fact it makes the situation worse.
And I'd go as far to say I know that it's a different situation with drug use.
But again, that's like the only example we have of sort of something similar is when you make something like that, something that should be really recreational based, sort of banned and illegal, it will inherently cause, I guess, a high one. Like some people just do things because they want to rebel, right? And if like pornography is illegal,
I'm just going to say this:
you can't make it impossible.
What proportion of the male population do you think consumes that type of stuff? Like
85%.
85%. Yeah, that's what I would say as well. It's probably higher.
It's probably like 95.
Do you think that 85% of the population is going to like find a way to skirt around the rules like actively and consciously?
Yes.
Or do you think that they know it's disgusting? Do you think that they know it's disgusting inherently, and the additional deterrent of fine and also a difficulty or increasing difficulty to access it? Don't you feel like that would deter almost all of them?
I think at best 50%.
Sorry? At best?
I think 50%. At best. Yeah, I think at best. I feel like if you want something, you're going to get it.
But isn't that better than no? Isn't that better than none?
In a sense, yes.
So what's your argument?
I feel like if you're going to find, like if you make something like that illegal and hard to get, at the same time, it's going to lead people, to these dodgy internet forums, these dodgy sites. Instead of finding one video, they might have a high chance of, say, finding child pornography instead. You run that risk.
Don't you feel that small benefit is benefit enough? That's reason enough to mandate it. What does it take? What does it take to ban it? Maybe it takes one government department, server, and like $500 million. It's nothing in the grand scheme of things.
It is, but I feel like one, it's going to lead people to areas of the internet you don't want to be leading them to. Sort of the dark and deep web.
What percentage of people do you think actually uses the dark web?
I think a higher percentage than you would like to think.
Okay, 5%. I'm going to grant you 5%.
I think it'd be higher.
At the ceiling. No way. No way.
I think it'd be higher.
I don't know who you're hanging out with. Come on, don't be silly. How many people do you think even know how to access it? I don't know how to access it, for example.
But if you want to access it, you can. If you want something badly, you're going to get it. Doesn't matter how many laws you're going to put in place, you're going to get it.
I'm just going to say, number one, it's going to deter enough people, and because like plain and simple, people have lived without it for literally all of history until like the 80s.
Not really, to be honest. This has been I know in ancient Japan, there was a drawing, it's like a octopus person. It's called The Tale of the Fisherman's Wife, where
Christ,
she got raped by an octopus basically, and there's drawings of it from ancient Japanese mythology. So
and do you think people are using that to excite themselves?
Maybe. I don't know. I don't come from that time period personally. I feel like in some form.
Or was it just a folk tale?
It was a folk tale, but there's a drawing of it if you go to the Wikipedia.
All right, there's a drawing of it. All right, whatever. That's not the same. Would you say that that's the same?
It's still a type of pornography.
Well, no, it's not a type of there's sexual scenes in movies. It doesn't make the movie pornography.
No.
I think pornography is specifically for gratification. It would even call yeah. This is okay. I'm just going to make a final point of this. Shouldn't our laws reflect our values? So if we value a clean mind, if we value innocence in children, if we value the protection of vulnerable women against perverts, shouldn't we enforce those laws to the best of our ability?
Sure.
Okay. So why shouldn't we do that for COVID?
Again, there's nuances.
Tell me what the nuances are, because I actually agree with you, but I'm wondering how you're coming at it.
I'm coming at it from the idea that COVID as a disease, right? Is it deadly? Yes. If it wasn't deadly, people wouldn't be dying, right? Yeah. Is it infectious? Yeah. Is it, say, as bad as Ebola? No. Is it going to lead to the elimination of 20% of humanity?
No.
No.
No way.
It's generally just speaking, affects people, say I think 65. If we count the Delta variant, which apparently is looked at or whatever, I don't know. It's 65 and over, or if you have a pre-existing health condition. I feel in terms of a net benefit, a net drag on society, I don't feel personally that this is compared to, say, the dangers of pornography or widespread drug use and misuse. I don't think it's on that sort of a level. Doesn't need to be stopped and treated, yeah, but doesn't need to be treated as an existential threat to humanity.
Well, here's how I feel. COVID, like the porn industry, it's not taking the vaccine and watching porn. Both lead to the like risk for other people or a negative externality for other people.
Yeah.
And it's simply a question of whether we value freedom of choice more than we value whatever the probability function is, or the function is, like the sort of expected outcome is for that negative externality. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like,
and I feel like it's a person to person thing.
Yeah, for a person to get infected by a person with COVID and die from it, and that has the vaccine, it's 1 in 16,000.
Yeah. I feel like people should get the vaccine personally. But again, if they don't want to and they want to risk their lives and the lives of others, yeah, it's inherently selfish.
But is 1 in 16,000 like technically there's a 1 in 16,000, there's a more than 1 in 16,000 chance that you die on any given year, in any given year.
Yeah.
Like is that low enough?
It just depends on how you assess risks as a government and as an individual.
Yeah. I mean, you can see, like, with this sort of idea, you can see why there's always sort of a authoritarian push with any sort of prevailing infectious disease. And it's really scary to see it, like how easily things can devolve. Because I would have never said what I just said 18 months ago.
Oh, yeah.
But now I actually, like, think about it. All right, I think that's enough of the depressing stuff, and let's just move on to some concerning stuff.
Depressing?
Yeah. No, it's not really that depressing. It's more exciting.
Okay.
Actually, that's probably a bad way to put it. So the AUKUS deal, how are you feeling about it?
The AUKUS. I kept thinking you were saying orcas, as in the killer whale. I was like, because killer whales are generally like. By the way, as a side tangent on like Animal Kingdom, orcas torture seals and stingrays for fun. They'll like slap them out of like 80 feet out of the water, let them go back in the water. They die from impact and they just leave them. Or like they'll intentionally push seals and penguins off icebergs for them to get back on and then push them off again for like endlessly.
Yeah.
So like they intentionally torture other animals. But we'll go on to Hey guys, it's post-production George here. So George from the future, just letting you know the next 40 minutes of a podcast, so basically the last part of it is, to be honest, quite boring. I go on like a rambling, like a madman monologue for about half an hour. Then after which Anthony and I just discuss the topic of what makes an ally in foreign policy. So quite boring. The timestamps will be on the screen probably for where to skip if you want to go to the end. But unless you're really interested, you could probably just stop here because it is quite boring. What's going to happen? My prediction, for example, is in 5 years there will be a war between Ethiopia and Egypt over the Ethiopians building a dam with the Nile River. It's going to be the world's first water war. I think 5, max 10 years that's going to happen based off current trajectory. But sort of like France, I turn on the news one day, bam, nuclear submarines.
For Australia.
For Australia.
Yeah.
Gotta love it. For the fellow to my right, down under over there.
Yeah.
The great, definitely doesn't have dementia, President Joe Biden stated.
Not the fellow, the fella.
Fella.
Yeah,
speaking of Joe Biden, he famously tweeted, well, I don't say famously, but he did tweet at the G7, diplomacy is back. Obviously him. And his whole idea was that he was going to get America back with its allies. It's going to work with Europe again, work with NATO again. Diplomacy is back, baby. We're one global community.
And let's not forget the actual focus is mainly on Europe when he said that.
Yes,
because relations with the UK were better than ever.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
He was mainly focusing on Europe. And so in improving relations with Europe, he has in fact worsened them with Europe's up-and-coming dominant nation, France. France, obviously, with Merkel leaving Germany, is gearing towards becoming, once again, as Germany ends its Fourth Reich, a Reich being a period in history where the German people historically are the powerful nation on the continent of Europe. So the Holy Roman Empire, the German Empire, the the Nazi Party, and now obviously Merkel's. I guess Germany, from like say end of like Euro crisis to now, has been the dominant nation on continental Europe.
Definitely since 2000.
100%. And I feel like with Merkel leaving and Brexit, France with Macron is gearing up to becoming, once again, because in Europe, continental Europe, there's always like two powers. Russia's always there, but you always have either Germany on top with France being second, or France on top with Germany being second. And it is time again for Germany to become second place and for France to take its rightful place. I like Macron. Historically speaking, I am a fan of the French people, Napoleon and such. So I'm quite happy. Yeah. I'm quite happy for France to take what I believe its rightful place as the king of Europe. Obviously,
you wouldn't include the UK in Europe?
No, because they're an island, they're not on continent. I'm talking continental Europe, like the continent, not like the fucking island UK. UK has always been strange with its relationship with Europe historically. Like it gets involved, and then there's times where it doesn't get involved. It's very strange. Like the UK is very strange in that regard. But France, they've got their hands all over Africa. They've got their
they only relinquished France was printing African money, or like was controlling Africa. Jesus Christ, how can I forget this?
African assets?
I'm gonna put the name of the
organization or whatever.
Yeah, the collection of countries like on the thing. So that they were organizing the monetary policy for them, which is pretty much taking away self-government from those people.
In the form of until 2 years ago. Neo-colonialism.
I'd say outright colonialism.
Yeah.
But yeah.
France, after the country Chad had its president assassinated, Macron was right there. Because the theory was that his son assassinated him, and Macron was right there legitimizing his son straight away. So France has their hands all over Africa on a level which rivals the CIA's level of involvement in South America and Central America.
Even
greater
70 years after they've left Lebanon, they still have tremendous support within the Catholic population in Lebanon. The French Prime Minister Macron. Is it president? Sorry, the French president.
He's president.
Yeah, he went down to Lebanon after the explosion back last August, and he was welcomed like you would have thought like he was Mother Teresa or something in Lebanon. The way the media covered him, like absolutely adoration from the people.
France as well is gearing to increase its population. I think I remember seeing somewhere it was close to 100 million people by 2050. I could be wrong on that. It's a vague memory. They were increasing their ties with early on. They were last year when Greece was getting ready to go to war with Turkey over like Aegean Sea oil rights, which I think we'll end up discussing next week as Erdogan goes to the US. But he's gearing up. He's selling defense contracts, so he's gearing up. He's arming up to become the top dog in Europe. He's gearing up. So obviously, as an up-and-coming sort of local power, you would expect, and as a key member of NATO in the EU, you would expect some form of respect from one of your biggest allies. First of all, we'll get to Australia in a bit. I think we should. I'm going to tackle it like America, UK, and Australia in terms of relevance as well on the global stage. So you would expect some form of diplomatic warning from your American ally that this was happening. Maybe even, my opinion, is direct involvement with France as well. France obviously still owns New Caledonia, meaning it is a power in the Pacific. So I think my broader idea...
It is a presence in the Pacific, I wouldn't say a power.
It is.
I mean, they pretty much shot themselves a couple of years ago, 4 months ago, sorry, when they had actually a nuclear submarine in Chinese waters, and like China almost like lost their minds over it. They pulled out like faster than the yeah. I'm gonna leave the rest of that.
Leave it there.
Your imagination.
Leave it there. But obviously, France is a dominant sort of nation. Whether it likes to be or not, it is in the Pacific. And if you're looking to counter China's influence in the Pacific, I think France is a key ally to have. Not only because of its influence over Africa, which is a key area of the world that China wants dominance over.
Yeah,
it is
for sure.
It is becoming the keystone state of the European Union, our Western ally, the European Union, as a collective.
And I would also say, like, before you move on, I'd also say it's becoming the central over the horizon force for Western influence 100%. In a militaristic sense. Like, who cleaned up the mess in Afghanistan is continuing to clean it up. It's not the US.
It's the French.
It's the French.
The French also have the French Foreign Legion, obviously a pseudo-mercenary group composed of purely foreigners trained to serve the French government. But again, they're not like a regular army. France can put them somewhere, and if they die, they die. It's sort of like it's mercenaries effectively, and I think that's a great asset that France has on like a military level. I think like that sort of special forces unit serves the nation greatly because you don't get the public outcry that you would have say X amount of Marines died, as opposed to the French Foreign Legion died. Like no one cares. So I think as a military asset, it serves France greatly. So I think France should have been treated by the US, by Biden. And whether it's Biden or Harris or the fuckwit Tony Blinken, I did not like Tony Blinken. I remember when he got appointed. By the way, this is a fun fact for you, Anthony. When he got appointed, I said that America would be back in Syria. And everyone said that I was wrong. But a couple months into the Biden presidency, guess who was bombing Syria? It was Biden. Who was correct? Me. So he should have treated France with a lot more respect than they have. They sucker punched them. And now the diplomatic consequences will be longer lasting than bloody diplomats leaving the nation. France will not forgive this. And I don't think they will forget either. And it will not help Western efforts to counter Chinese influence in the Pacific and in Europe and Africa. It was a big fuck up on Blinken, Biden, Kamala Harris, whoever you want to put it on. It was a big fuck up by them to not at least let France know this was going to happen. Yeah. Before I move on, do you have any points?
Yeah, I think there's two sides to this, right? I know you haven't gotten to Australia yet, so maybe you want to go on to that. The UK seems to be there's actually a quote from the French foreign minister.
I will talk about England a bit because of Brexit.
Yeah,
I feel like it.
Go on to Australia. I'm going to find his quote because it's actually pretty funny.
Actually, I'll quickly just mention UK since you mentioned it. It's not that big of a point. But obviously, the UK is still having trouble negotiations with the EU in regards to Brexit. And some of this drama comes with the English Channel and fishing rights in the English Channel between French and English fishermen. Obviously, if you're in negotiations with France over fishing rights, you certainly wouldn't go behind their back and piss them off to the nth degree, which Boris has certainly done, and this will certainly backfire on Brexit talks and negotiations with the EU. I do not think
the animosity of France isn't directed towards the UK.
It's mainly towards the US and Australia. However, I feel like there will be a side point. I feel like it's not a great animosity. I can't speak today, but I feel like it will be felt. But we'll get to Australia. We've hit the world stage, and not in a good way, as with most things with Australia. ScoMo has dogged the French because we obviously had some submarine deal with Malcolm Turnbull. I remember he was prime minister for a good 6 months, blink of an eye. For those who aren't Australian, and if you're watching this, Australia had a good period where we had more prime ministers than federal elections. Mainly due to instability in the Liberal National Party. We had Tony Abbott, Malcolm Turnbull, and then ScoMo. So ScoMo...
3 prime ministers in 3 years.
Yes, it's stable. Stability. That's what you want in a democracy. You want stability, not that. Anyway, bit of a side point, I guess. Bit of commentary on Australian politics. But ScoMo has dogged the French. I'm of the general opinion we can have our cake and eat it too when it comes to trying to counter, because China is the common enemy. And I think if we can have our cake and eat it too, I think we should. And we should have kept the deal with France. And we could have had, I don't understand why we can't have nuclear submarines and the submarines with France at the same time. Maybe you know a bit more about why we can't have both.
Yeah. It's not that, it's like you don't spend $60 billion, which it's $59 billion for obsolete submarines.
The ones we're getting from France obsolete.
Non-nuclear powered standard submarines, they're not effective at this point in time. And they're certainly not effective against the sort of adversaries that we have now and sort of rising threat in the Pacific region.
Okay. I feel like it's always good to have a backup.
The benefit of diesel submarines, they can't go nearly as fast. The benefit of diesel submarines is that they're quiet. They're good for spying. They're good for that type of stuff.
But
and
when
Australia has...
don't we want to spy on China?
Australia hasn't... There's no need for speed when you're spying. Oh, there is a little bit, but not really. Australia already has a massive fleet of Collins-class submarines that aren't being retired anytime soon.
Okay, so I can see now why we can't have our cake and eat it too. But I feel like as Australia, is it a smart deal to go with nuclear submarines? Yes.
And also, if you take both, because I think they're both $50 billion deals, that would be 10% of the Australian GDP. So and it would all be an outflow because they're not being made in Australia. And that's actually a second point that I'd like to make quickly. This is a message directly to ScoMo. I repeat, do not make Australia wait till 2040 to have nuclear powered submarines.
Oh, that is stupid.
The threat is here and now. We need to have the threat is here and now. The threat is here and now. Sure, it's not great that we're not going to get the jobs for building, like the much needed engineering jobs in Australia. We're like a country, a very educated country, no jobs for those educated people.
A lot of our friends, as a side note, a lot of our friends in university are doing engineering degrees.
Even my dad's an electrical engineer. He was working on the Collins class submarines. Like, there's no type of work for that now. He's in banking now. It's like
Australia does not have an engineering industry.
It really doesn't, unless you're talking about software. But anyways, that's a side note. It's once we have the submarines here, there's going to be repairs. There's going to be plenty of shit that's going to happen. Trust me.
Oh yeah.
ScoMo, that's good enough. Just get the capabilities first.
Also, why aren't we using this to launch our nuclear power program? Because I think you and I both agree we need nuclear power. It's not tonight.
This is a step towards it.
ScoMo has said in the press it's not a step. He said that Australia will not be. But he says one thing, he does another half the time.
I hope he doesn't mean that, because enriched uranium is like for example, the normal procedures that's been followed by India and, in my opinion, Pakistan and Iran. Oh, actually, would you say that? The last one might be bullshit. So usually you start off with a nuclear submarine or a nuclear reactor or something like that for energy,
and then
that enriches the uranium. You get more, sort of nuclear power expertise within like the economy, and then you enrich that uranium, and when you enrich it the second time, it's military, grade. So, yeah, it's definitely a step towards it. Whether we take that step or not, like whether we continue on that step or not, is, I guess, ScoMo or future prime minister's decision.
You can have nuclear power without having nuclear missiles. It is somewhat stupid, but again, nuclear power is a great solution to global warming, in my opinion. But this is our nuclear power, and we need to keep that on. We can talk about this. So we've dogged France. If we do need the nuclear submarines, which we kind of do, I feel like we should at least let France know at minimum a month before it gets released.
Yeah.
We need to give them some adequate compensation, because we've wasted their time. We've given them false expectations. They've probably made financial decisions based on this deal.
Yeah, that's true.
We need to give them some sort of compensation, whether that be a port in Australia. I think of France having a port here would be a great thing, because they, personally, if Americans can have military bases here, I feel like the French, I think we should pay them some respect in that regard. But there should be some sort of compensation for France for doing such a thing. So we've not only, we've dogged them, but we've also now, in a sense, weakened our alliance with Europe. Both America and Australia have. France has removed their diplomats. Obviously, this is not what we need when facing the threat of China. we are now retroactively fixing our problems. The problem with foreign policy has always been this. Instead of proactively solving a problem, we always reactively do it. And this has come to fruition with China. Did you know in 2014, or it would have been like 2012, 2014, that time period, China was building some islands near the Philippines, man-made islands. Obviously, the Philippines is a strong ally of the US, and if these islands were recognized by the United Nations with international law of the sea, obviously international law in China is a joke. However, as a legitimate thing, islands are strategically important because of the exclusive economic zone, which extends 25 km from the coast of an island, meaning that is your national border of an island. So if a ship goes through that, it's a declaration of war. China has put these along the Philippines with their main intent for spying. They're not for civilian use, as China claims. The satellite footage has shown they are used for spying. Obviously, the Obama administration, with Joe Biden leading its foreign policy with Hillary Clinton, because Barack Obama was mainly a domestic policy guy. Instead of, getting the US Pacific Fleet to show up and just basically be like, fuck off, they just read a strongly worded statement saying, we don't support this, but left it. So instead of curbing China before it became as dominant as it is now, the US sort of turned a blind eye to it. I guess because of the war of terror, but again, there's substantial evidence to suggest that the Americans created the war on terror themselves. I feel like American foreign policy in the Obama days should have been focused on China. The Belt and Road Initiative, the New Silk Road, have seen China's influence in the world increase beyond the point for which that they should. They are reorganizing world trade routes to circumvent India. They are trying to control the South China Sea. The US has done nothing about it up until the Trump presidency. Hate to break it to you, but Trump is the only one who started to care. China has bought ports, the port of Piraeus in Greece, one of the most active merchant ports. They are buying influence in Africa and the Pacific Islands, where Australia has been lazy at best and negligent at worst. China has secured a strong alliance with Russia, despite China claiming they are in parts of Russia. While America, Australia, New Zealand, and every other nation in the Pacific has sat on their ass and done nothing. So now, when China has become the big threat that they are and the new superpower that they are, we are trying to retroactively fix this problem, and we are not doing it in the correct way. This new deal with Australia, the UK, and the US is not enough to counter Chinese influence in the Pacific. We are fighting a bear. It's not a Wolverine fighting a bear where the Wolverine can kill the bear. It's a bear fighting a fucking doe. It's not going to work. We need a Wolverine to fight the bear. And the only way we're going to get that is multilateral cooperation. And on this thing, on the point I mentioned earlier was that China has rerouted world trade routes in the Indian Ocean to avoid India, to go to Sri Lanka instead of India. India, geographically and demographically, because demographics play an important role in the nation. Historically, they have, and have in some cases dictated the domestic policy of nations. If you look into the history of Israel and Palestine, you'll find that demographics shaped Ben Gurion's policy domestically and in regards to foreign policy after the War of Independence. That's a side note on the nature of demographics. But they've circumvented India. India has a similar population to China. Geographically, it's in a better position. India is a developing nation in which it has strong ties to the West, historically as a former British colony. Instead of America needs to take an ego hit. America is no longer the world's best superpower. China is, and America is declining naturally. Powers rise and fall throughout human history. It is natural. America is falling in a similar way the UK was falling from global sort of dominance after the Second World War. What America, Australia, and the UK need to do is what France is doing, which is working with India to build stronger Indo-Pacific alliances. France has started to work with India to help build better defense relationships And in regards to Afghanistan as well, they're looking to help India control the situation because Afghanistan is within their sort of sphere of influence. The Indo-Pacific as a problem is only one aspect of the China problem. What we need to do to counter the influence is one, we need to artificially, and I know you agree with this on some level, that we need to artificially increase the speed of which India is becoming a superpower. It inevitably will be. We need to get India on the UN Security Council. The UN still has some relevancy, even though I believe it is a joke. If we need to get India on the UN, if China's on the UN Security Council and Russia, we need India there too. We need another ally on the UN Security Council. We need to increase our economic ties with India. Not only that, we need to form what I call Super NATO, where, we're talking the best of the best. America, England, India, Australia, New Zealand, France. Not only these 6 nations, South Korea, Japan, the Philippines, Indonesia, because it's only the cooperation from these nations. It is like 7 nations, 8 nations if you want to include Vietnam, right? Because by the way, Vietnam historically does not like China. You can get 8 nations in the South China Sea allied against a common enemy. These nations aren't like a situation World War II where we have the enemy of my enemy is my friend. We have a situation where they are our friends. And we need to do it now. We need to build the Asian NATO. And not only that, a message to the Sindaran, please increase New Zealand defense presence in the Pacific. It is required. I don't know, Anthony, do you have any sort of points?
I think that's all good. I really do. Like, it makes sense. It's a clear strategy. But I think it sort of misses the point of where the world's headed. Like, to begin with, we talked about early on how this is a stab in the back for France. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Well, would it not be a stab in the back to Australia that France offered us what were before nuclear grade submarines and engineered them to be diesel to sell them to us?
I guess somewhat, but but you're dealing
like,
with a
completely baffling. Why would they do that? And why would they expect us to buy them? We already have diesel powered submarines.
Well, we did buy
that
them.
Have at least 10 years left in them. Well, we didn't buy them, that's correct. But they shouldn't have expected it. 2, is there not something to be said for the Anglosphere? Is there not something to be said for the Anglosphere?
In terms of?
Well, there's no 3 closer countries in terms of culturally and historically than Australia, England, and the UK. So
yes.
Australia, England, and the US. There isn't.
Australia, England, and the UK, yeah.
Like, if you go to the US, you'd feel at home almost. People call Australia the mini US, and it's the same for the UK. How many people do you know that like gone to work in the UK? It's like the same thing, pretty much. They just have shit teeth. Like, and why? Like, the only thing that I would say is that just because France, I'm going to say this before I actually say what I want to say. I think the whole thing's an overreaction from France. And it feels childish to me. But would you agree with that at all? Do you think there's any validity in that?
Because would you like
don't feel like
friends went behind, like, imagine a situation where your friends went behind your back and dogged the deal that you had already made. Yes, did France dog Australia? Yeah. In terms of the submarines, sure. But, as an ally, there needs to at least be some sort of notice.
Yeah, sure. Do you think that France necessarily had to be part of this military pact? Because it's not like, oh, this is a new whole new alliance, like we're starting a new council, new UN or something like that. No, it's just this one organization we're doing for Australia to acquire nuclear submarines. It's one piece of infrastructure.
But obviously the intention of it is to curb Chinese influence. And if we want to curb Chinese influence, we need to include more than just America and the UK. So I feel like on some level, France should have been involved. If not like giving us nuclear submarines, but at least involved with us in the Pacific.
Why should France be involved, but New Zealand shouldn't?
I think New Zealand should as well. I believe New Zealand needs to pull a finger out of their ass and
So we
start
can't.
becoming a big player.
The thing is, I think it's like I feel like the whole thing's blown out of proportion. It's like this is the new gold standard for Australian alliances. No, it's not. It's It's just we're building on an old alliance to secure some vital military infrastructure for ourselves
In a
that's
period which is
necessary
taking
for our
too long.
sovereignty. And like I said before, just buy the submarines. Don't worry about making them in Australia. It's true. I think you're right, 100%. India is our best shot at this. You know, I even like what is I? Do you know what iron ore makes up of like Australian economic exports?
Isn't it the majority?
I thought it was like 10%. It's the
I
highest.
thought it was a lot more. But China can easily
I
move
might be
to
wrong.
Brazil because Brazil is like the second largest.
That's the thing. Can China easily move to Brazil?
I
I
feel
don't
like
think so. It's not the same grade of iron ore, and they can't produce as much as we can at the moment. It's like at least a 5-year waiting time. So in that time, just screw them. Just screw them. Like sell it at half the price to India. Sell it at half the price to India. And what's called
economic incentive to go do business in India instead of China.
We will take a hit. We will take a hit, but we're going to build up India that way.
We need India.
Like the world needs India, and I can envision a place where we have a pact with the US, UK, whatever, for them to help subsidize iron ore from Australia to India, so that Australia is not economically devastated from that. Wouldn't that be a more intelligent deal?
Probably.
Because that's a load spread across all nations. One, Australia is taking a half price hit, and then it's spread across. And that's like, I don't hear anyone talking about that. That makes sense to me. Because not only will it
be our future.
Not only will it shut down the Chinese economy for a minimum of 5 months, just for the supply chains from Brazil to get up and running.
Yeah.
Like that's devastating. That's devastating right there. I tell you, that's going to be worse than whatever impact COVID had at China. And then we're building India up fast.
Of course, and we need India.
Before we started this call, like there was a question that we discussed. What makes an ally? You know, like I think that's really interesting. So what do you think makes an ally? I think this is important because obviously, like, it's almost as if France doesn't conceive us as an ally now that we've betrayed them once. And yeah, so I think, like, what's an ally to you?
I think we need to have, I think in terms of an ally, to say that they need to have similar values historically is something we need for a long-term ally. For a short-term ally, it's not necessary for cooperation. Seen in the Second World War, seen in the US funding the Mujahideen in Afghanistan in the 70s. It's not a requirement for a short-term ally. For a long-term ally, it is a necessity. In terms of what makes an ally, what you need is reliance. You know, a bit of give and take, compromise, and a common and in the long term a common goal. Usually that's to curb the influence of a nation historically. I think what makes a great long-term ally is demographics, a common set of values on some fundamental level, and great geography, like positioning in the world. You know, okay. India is a great long-term ally because of where it is. You know, Europe's a great long-term ally because of where it is.
Can I ask what you mean by demographics?
I mean, in terms of demographics, as a point, I mean in terms of, say, population size, like in terms of how, like, working, unemployment, like those sorts of demographics. Like, I guess on
so
some level,
like economic strength.
Yeah.
Can I ask? Do you think, like, obviously, an economically strong ally is obviously great, but do you think that we shouldn't be allies with people that can't? Oh, sorry, not people, with nations that don't offer that same economic force?
No, I think we should. No, sorry, I meant, like, I think we should be regardless.
So, like, that brings us back to the question: what's Like, what are we looking for in an ally? What's the criteria?
Because in the end, you
Yeah.
just want someone who has the same enemy as you, because you're both united by that cause. For it to last long term, you need to have more than just a common enemy. You need like a common ideology, common values.
Like,
But both short term and long term, you need a common enemy.
I mean, I want to agree with that, and that's why I brought it up, because I think it's a really interesting topic. Like, was it good that the West was allies with Russia in World War II? You know,
Yes.
the Russians ended up winning the war for us. Oh, sorry, in World War One. World War One. Is that right? Holy shit, my brains.
Wait, which war are you talking about? Are you talking about against the Nazis or against the German Empire? Which one?
I think it's in both. Against the Nazis, German Empire who ended it. I'm pretty sure it's the Russians.
The German Empire, Russia, sort of like the problem with Russia in World War One is it was sort of going through a crisis politically, domestically. It was sort of like it wasn't like a big, right? It was just sort of,
it's at the start of the revolution. The Russian Revolution is 1922.
Yeah, the Russian Revolution started in 1917.
Yeah.
But like Russia in World War One, as much as like they did lose and did shit the bed, they did help because it diverted German forces. Whereas the West was focused on one front, Germany had to fight a war on two fronts, which wasn't logistically feasible.
And like in World War II, obviously, Russia was the nation that defeated the Nazis. Is that correct?
Yeah, they got to Berlin first.
But like, there's also a point to be made that I believe there was actually 1 million dedicated Russian forces that supported the Nazis. Is that right?
I actually don't know how many Russian people would have fought with the Nazis. But you know, there was people in India, say, who supported the Japanese and colluded with the Japanese people. You know, even though India was fighting against Japan, there were still sections of paramilitaries that were helping Japan out. But there was obviously fascists in England and America. There will always be some people who will just side with someone else on an ideological basis.
Yeah, I'm going to put up an article that explains Russian support for the Nazi forces. It was 1 million soldiers, so obviously that would have aided the Nazi force, wouldn't it? Are they still a good ally? Are they still a worthwhile ally? I don't know.
Well, I feel like we wouldn't have been able to defeat the Nazis as quickly without Russia.
But like, just because does that make them an ally? Because they were considered an ally, but does that make, like, if they just fought the Nazis, did that make them an ally? Or just a country with common interest?
They were an ally, because obviously you did have like the Posen conference, sorry. The bloody like press conferences, you know, where like England and America and Stalin, you know, they'd meet and discuss sort of common ideas and strategy as an ally. You know, we did give them Eastern Europe and Eastern Germany and East Berlin. Like, they were treated as an ally. They were pretty in the loop. Like, even in regards to the nuclear project, the KGB knew. So, like, they were in the loop without the West knowing they were in the loop.
Yeah. So I guess then, like, the Taliban would be an ally for the West now.
I think, give it like 5 years, then I think diplomatic relations with the Taliban may happen. Although I don't think Afghanistan will be that stable in 5 years, personally.
Do you not feel that diplomatic relations with the Taliban have not already begun?
With China has already begun because of the mineral resources in Afghanistan.
For sure, but so is the US.
Well, the negotiation, sure, but I don't think it will escalate to the point of like an ally. I think we're just sort of talking to them out of necessity. Not like, similar to how we were with Russia, but I don't think we're going to have them, say, become an ally or a friend of the US.
Yeah. So, my whole shtick, like, I think what you said is right. My whole shtick about allies is that I feel like I used to think like, oh, they're the most important thing is that they have the same values.
For long-term success, 100%.
I think like allies, like Saudi Arabia has been allies with the US now for how long? 40 years?
Something like that. Years?
How many like genuine terrorist groups has Saudi Arabia funded during that time?
I believe they helped fund ISIS. Obviously, Osama bin Laden had his connections in Saudi Arabia.
All of Osama bin Laden's money came from Saudi Arabia.
Obviously,
3,000 Americans.
Obviously, there's been some evidence to say Saudi Arabia had some involvement in 9/11.
Yeah, for sure. The guy that orchestrated it was Saudi Arabian, which links to the Saudi Arabian royal family. So, Saudi Arabia is undoubtedly a great ally for the US. And
would you say they're an ally though by funding these terrorist groups?
That's what I'm saying. It's like not about like this is what what makes a successful diplomatic fight. I don't think you can actually be an ally with a country that's a lot weaker than you because there's just not compatible.
We're allies with Greece. Greece is a very weak nation.
Greece is a great strategic point, and I don't think we're great allies with Greece. To be honest.
I would argue that America is, or on the surface, has been in the past.
Well,
and Biden did say that he would want to kick Turkey out of NATO.
Okay.
That's put a smile on my face.
Well, I'll just say this. Well, I think that's more because the US is enemies with Turkey, or increasingly so. Well, like just this point. The US has had tremendous influence in Lebanon, a small nation in the Middle East. Tremendous economic influence and help, tremendous, like in terms of culturally, all of the universities in Lebanon, like the English speaking ones, were started by like US missionaries and like educators, and politically, the US has supported like all of the major parties and pretty much like brought many people into power. But at the same time, the US doesn't give two shits about Lebanon and has allowed it to defecate on itself. Is that an ally? No.
No.
Additionally, the US has not stepped in to eradicate the forces in Lebanon, which have brought up conflict and started conflict with Israel. Are they allies? No, they've let the country completely go to shit, even though they did have influence. On top of that, they allowed Palestinian influence in Lebanon where it was unjust, and Syrian occupation in the 70s. Like, by all standards, Lebanon considered the US to be an ally, and the US considered Lebanon to be an ally until 9/11.
But what you've done there is what you've shown is at the end of the day, when it all comes down, when all is said and done, it's about benefiting me before you. The US will always put its interest above Australia, England, and Europe. It will. It always will. Australia will always put its own interests. Well, theoretically, it's meant to put its own interests. I would argue Australia has not put its own interests ahead of the interests of other nations.
The interest of Australia is to be in the interest of other nations.
Yes, but I think
at least for now,
the world superpowers historically have always prioritized their interests over their allies' interests. Unfortunately, whether you think that's right
with notable exceptions,
whether you think it's right or wrong, it's an inevitability.
The thing is, when you support your allies, your sphere of influence grows. If the US had supported Lebanon in defeating its sort of internal struggle and protecting it from Syria, Lebanon would probably taken over Syria. The Palestinian problem would have gone away to some extent due to Lebanon's neutralizing force in the region. There wouldn't be a conflict between Israel and Lebanon. it would have brought a lot of peace in the Middle East, in my opinion. Lebanon's also the connection between the Middle East and Europe, even more than in a cultural way.
Yeah.
And in an economic sense.
What you're touching on there, Anthony, is my big problem with foreign policy. Is you're not thinking about 5, 10, 15 years in the future. You're thinking about the next election cycle. Foreign policy is not long lasting. It is, what can I do within my election, say for a US president? What can I do so when I go to the election, when I go to the debates, it makes me look like a good candidate? It is not proactive, and it has always been reactive in the modern era. It's never proactive, and it never has foresight.
When you say that, like, you can't say that about Chinese foreign policy, though.
Chinese foreign policy has taken the approach I would: proactive, long-term thinking.
Yeah.
Which it has, and also.
See, I'm kind of like, I don't agree with that. I feel like that I'm not that cynical towards world leaders. I don't think that people are simply in office. I'm elected, UPAE, I've got the power, let me keep it. I don't give a shit what happens. It's not my responsibility. I just want to get elected again. Because that's what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
And like myself, I like, if I was in a position of power, I don't give a shit if I get elected again. That's not true. I would care, like, because that's a sort of indictment of what the job that you've done. But I'd always have to do what's right.
I feel like you're an anomaly. I am of the opinion that absolute power corrupts absolutely. That these politicians may come in there with like an honest.
But just
you know what? They come in being honest.
Here's the problem with that statement. Just the fact that politicians can be, just the fact that they have to worry about being elected, like re-elected, proves that they don't have absolute power.
Well, in a sense, they sort of. Well, I guess when they are elected, they have sort of the power to, particularly a president.
No one has absolute power. I think it's a false idea.
Suka, you're taking it out of. I'm just saying, like, the idea of getting some form of power on like a nation or a state level will inevitably. Maybe you're the exception. Maybe you're the future president that America needs, Anthony. That's what it needs.
Even though I'm an Australian, but yeah.
Yes, it needs you the pure heart gold. Where I feel like most people go into politics pure heart, but they come out self-serving, in many nations corrupt people.
Yeah, so I think that brings us actually nicely back to our idea of allies. I don't feel like they exist. If that's the case, they can't exist. Because no nation's interests have been aligned for that long. No nation's interests align themselves year to year, month to month.
It depends on the nation, I guess. It depends on which stage of development a nation is.
And actually, I take that back. If you're a superpower, you can't have allies, but only if you're a superpower. Because, like, for example, the US, their influence is so strong that it's always in the worst interest of the country to go
other nations beg to be allies with you.
Yeah.
You don't want to be the one begging.
Yeah. I think also what you said there, it brings me to something that I've thought about time and time again over the pandemic and just over the last couple of years. But really, I guess it's a sort of thought that applies to the entirety of political history. It's like, how much does random small things like a bribe to one person, something that might be, like, let's say it's a $20 million bribe affecting a $20 trillion economy. How many small things that, like, the small things that are large to the individual have screwed up society? You know, like, do you have anything to say about that?
I feel like one small thing on its own, sure, you're not going to make a difference. The problem is the collection of these small incidents and the precedent set by them leads to long-term damage.
Like, for example, we saw at the beginning of the pandemic. I'm old enough to remember this because I'm not 2 years old. Or 5 years old, but let's just say I'm cognizant as well. I remember at the start of the pandemic, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer down in Chinatown in San Francisco.
Yes.
Like, how tokenistic can you get? Like,
yes.
China.
Do you remember when the media just called it a flu? Remember when the media called it a flu?
I remember when the media called any response to COVID xenophobic. I remember when you were a racist to suggest that COVID was a problem.
I remember when it was racist to close travel with China.
Yeah. Let's say we actually took President Trump's advice and closed those 2 weeks earlier. Australia included, the whole world included, because China allegedly managed to protect itself from the virus. Somehow, every other place in the entire world got the coronavirus like far more heavily than Beijing, for example, which apparently had like hardly any cases, even the outbreak within the country. So they managed to protect Beijing from the virus, but we couldn't protect Cyprus from the virus.
Well, Anthony, yeah. when you weld people's doors shut, they can't count it as a case, can they?
Yeah, because they just die inside. I don't know. That's not the point I'm making. Like, they did that for check political points. That's the truth of the matter. How much of this pandemic could have been avoided?
Yeah, if we just take the initiative.
How much? If they didn't politicize it for check.
I feel like if we closed our borders earlier, and we would
have. Working for Australia now. We spent somebody 8 months without any COVID. Imagine we spent 8 months. Imagine we spent 8 months at the start of the pandemic without any COVID. It's still contained in China because we locked down straight away.
We'd be able to better develop resources to help
better develop resources. We'd have testing immediately. We'd have the hotel quarantine system running as it does now.
Yeah, but you see, the hotel quarantine system, Anthony, even though it says it's not effective, it clearly doesn't work.
That 99, you said like 99.9% effective.
Yeah, that's what ScoMo said.
Like, the hotel quarantine system in Australia is the biggest fucking bullshit.
Oh, yeah, it does not
subcontractors of subcontractors, zero training, zero. Like in Melbourne, bloody Dan Andrews is like subcontractor, gave it to his mate for the cheapest one. And then
Victor Orban style.
Yeah, Victor Orban style. Can I just say, like, actually, I'll leave Dan Andrews at it. And then the subcontractors is bloody like sleeping with the people in hotel quarantine. It's like,
oh yeah, there's no standards in hotel quarantine. There's no standards.
Like bro. Like, honestly, I'm in favor of giving that guy a $20 billion fine to just cover the first week of damage that he caused. $20 billion. There you go. Fucking slap it on him. He's in detention servitude for the rest of his life. He's a fucking dickhead. All right, I take that back. No one deserves that much of a fine. Like $10.
Unless you're Greece.
Sorry?
Unless you're Greece.
I'm not sure how that. What?
Talk about large, excessive fines that cripple people in the nation.
I don't get the joke. I forgot what I was supposed to say now.
Talking about COVID and the hotel quarantine.
Like, small things can destroy. Like, because when you don't distribute power, when you put power in a small group of people, small things will destroy.
Yeah.
It's a faulty system. And I think it needs to change. I don't know how, though.
And clearly, if you try to change the system's going to not want to change.
Yeah. Because they have the power. So I guess that's my sort of conversion story to my new political stance, which is anarchism. All right. I think that's a great way to close this podcast.
So, of course. Also, like, subscribe, comment, obviously. We do have a Twitter, as we mentioned. I may post memes there if I'm bothered. Check it out. Also, let us know in the comments whether you think episode 1 will actually be uploaded. I honestly think it'll become a running joke, but we'll see how it goes.